Welcome to the Ex Good Girl podcast, the place where people pleasers, perfectionists, and overgivers come to unlearn the good girl rules that you thought were making you good, but now you can see are actually just keeping you small. If you've spent your life being unable to say no, putting everyone else's needs and feelings above your own, constantly seeking external approval, or avoiding conflict to make others feel comfortable, if guilt and resentment feel like a constant weight in your life, it is time to learn to knock that shit off. Every episode, we dive into the stories, skills, and strategies that you need to stop shrinking, start speaking up, and to live a life that is authentically and unapologetically yours, while also deepening the connection and vulnerability in the relationships that matter to you. I'm glad you're here. Let's jump in. Britt Hartley, I have been looking forward to this day for many, many weeks. I'm a huge fan. Give me a minute to fangirl here for a second, because you are one of the women who put so many of my words, you are one of the women who put so many of my thoughts into words in a way that just makes me like, oh, that's what I'm trying to say, or wow, I never thought about that way. So I'm just really grateful to have some time to talk with you today.
Thanks so much. A pleasure to be here. And we were saying off air that we've circled each other so many times that the time has finally come that we get to meet and chat, and just couldn't be happier to be here.
Absolutely. What do you want people who are listening to know about you?
Yeah, so I was raised Mormon and went through kind of a Mormon deconstruction, and now I am a spiritual atheist, and I'm an atheist spiritual director. So I have a master's degree in theology, and then I did a 2-year program on top of that in spiritual direction. And spiritual direction is really working with someone's deepest beliefs and fears and philosophical questions and death and those deeper things that sometimes therapists don't have either the ethical guidelines or even just the experience to be able to talk about. So I don't do therapy. I'm not a therapist. I'm very clear with clients that, like, okay, for that thing, you need to talk to a therapist. But that deeper, for lack of better words, soul space is where I work with clients now, and I just really love doing that work. And I do it in a way where let's find resources for you and your authentic spiritual life, and let's try to do that with as few demands on belief as possible. Meaning, we don't have to believe something to get there. If you want to use astrology, fine, let's use it as a tool for inner work, but I'm not going to force you to believe that the planets affect personality. I'm not going to force you to believe in God. I'm not going to force you to believe in Jesus. I'm going to say, here are some tools and resources for where you are that are really going to help you have just a very positive relationship with life in general.
I love that. I imagine people listening might have some questions about atheist and
Sure.
spiritual. Can you say
Yeah.
a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that I like the title, is because, like, it's so confusing. It at least gets me maybe a chance to explain myself. But spirituality is a word that just has a lot of religious baggage, right? That maybe you believe in spirits, or you have to believe in an afterlife, or you have to believe in past lives, or I'm a medium. But I'm an ex-Mormon, and ex-Mormons or post-Mormons are more likely to be atheists than other groups who deconstruct, because we have a young religion, and it's a record-keeping people. We actually get to see how religions get made. We see how prophets are formed. We see how scripture gets made. We see how a rumor becomes a myth, becomes a legend, becomes something in a manual. We get to see how that process happens. And so for me, being an atheist doesn't mean I know for sure that there is no God. It just means that coming from religion and a high demand religion, I have a certain allergy to truth claims. I have a certain allergy to people trying to sell me something or telling me that I have to believe in something. Because I've had that before in my life, I'm very sensitive to those demands on me. And so I want to talk about what is healthy spirituality, what are good tools and resources for the good life. How do we really fall in love with life itself? And I don't want to be sold that I have to believe something to get there because I've played that game before as a Mormon, and I just don't want to play that game anymore. So atheism to me, I mean, the technical term for atheism is not being convinced of a theistic God, but it says nothing else. It makes no other positive claims about the universe. I don't know what the heck is going on with the universe. It is fundamentally mysterious to me. I just like to have a lot of openness with it. But for me, healthy spirituality really came when I was able to get resources for a spiritual life and not have to have them tied to dogma and beliefs that will hold me back or maybe not true, or require a lot of mental gymnastics. I just don't want to do it that way anymore.
When I read your book, No Nonsense Spirituality, subtitles All the Tools, No Faith Required. I love that. It was like taking a deep breath because my own spirituality was so tangled up with having to have faith, having to believe certain things, having to, Mormonism is nothing if not a checklist of things that you must affirm or believe or, do to be considered literally worthy. It was, on the one hand, it was like really relieving to me because I think, like many people, and I have a lot of women who listen and men who listen to this podcast who have left high demand religions. How would you define high demand, just before we go on?
Yeah, so I really, when we talk about how we rate different religions, which is difficult, I really like to use the bite model and Stephen Hassan, because we can actually show how much is of this community is controlling your behavior, controlling the information that you're reading, how much of a cost do you pay, do you leave? And we can actually look at religions and say, hey, this one, it's going to be really hard if you leave it, if you have a faith crisis, if you are a little bit different. It's going to control your behavior in ways that are, from what we know of psychology, is unhealthy. And so high demand religion is just something that is high on the cult scale. Something low on the cult scale would be something like being a Swiftie. There are rituals, there's a community, there's a leader, there are pilgrimages to go to the concerts. But if I was a Swiftie yesterday and decided not to be a Swiftie today for whatever reason, I wouldn't get, excommunicated from my family or shunned from my family. I would have the ability to be able to change. And so we want to find organizations and communities because, we do need that as humans, but we want them to be in the healthy range. So high demand religion just means very high control of your life and a high cost if you leave.
Okay, I love that definition. I think that phrase gets thrown around a lot, and that really helps me. So your book was like a big sigh of relief because I didn't actually know how much of my Mormonism was going to go with me, right? When I left, and I actually had a dream. It felt very, oh good heavens, what's that Keanu Reeves movie where he's hooked up to my
Just like
husband's
the
going to kill me.
Matrix. Yeah,
The Matrix. It's his
Yeah.
favorite. Sorry, honey, couldn't remember the name of your favorite movie. But
It's
I was
okay. It's
standing.
rated R. We weren't supposed to see
That's
that when
true.
it came
That's
out.
right. I
I
never
didn't
saw
see it when it came out.
There's
When
a
it first
Mormon
came out.
rule. Yep.
I
There's a
know.
Mormon rule. No R-rated movies. So yes, I never saw it. That's why I don't remember it. But I was standing in a room, and the room was all white and flat, like no dimension. And all of the truths that I had believed were in little black boxes all around me. And I felt very like suffocated by them. They were all like very close and pressing on me. And I took my hands, and in Marvel superhero style, I just kind of pushed all these black boxes away from me, and they all just kind of flew back. And then I reached out and I was like, I'll take this one. I'll take this one. I'll take this one. But in my mind, I was like, in my dream, I was like, you can't do that. You can't just pick and
You
choose.
can't
And
be a
so,
cafeteria Mormon. I mean, it's really
right.
drilled into
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
Yeah, it really
I
is. And I
love
think,
dreams. I'm a huge fan of doing dream work as just kind of an access to what's going on in your subconscious. And so I love that idea. And I love your answer to that dream because we do have this tension between rationality and experience where our reason is like, I'm looking at this, church essay about Joseph Smith and I'm really troubled by some of this. But then on the experience side, there are things from spirituality that do make your life better. Things like awe and transcendence and community and mentors that help your children. And so these are in tension with each other. And so in this dream, you were trapped in this tension. And the answer, I think, is what you did in the dream, which is I don't have to, in order to hold on to the good of what spirituality is, I don't need to be constrained by these truth claims that I just don't feel are true. But I'm going to take this with me and I'm going to take this over here with me. And I really do feel like that is how we have wholeness between our rational brains and also the part of us that is experiential. Those are two different ways of knowing.
So that's kind of what I have been doing ever since.
Yes.
Is
love that journey for you.
Yeah, just trying to decide, is this something that I want? Is this something that serves me, that makes my life feel better because it's a part of either what I believe or what I do? And there are a lot of different kind of frameworks for, for this, but because we have the shared religious background and because there are so many people who come from like a Christian religion, and just because in kind of our Western way of seeing things, Christianity is baked in. I was absolutely fascinated. I read Celeste Davis Substack. I highly recommend it. And she was writing about religious tools and how, the title is Why Religious Tools Don't Work for Women. And I just thought, huh. And then partway through her essay, she has a TikTok, one of yours. And I listened to it and it felt for just a minute like the world just stopped, because it was one of those moments where different kind of disparate ideas in my mind kind of came together in a clear picture. And I saw why there was always something in me in Mormonism that felt like I have to try harder, more, just a little more, give a little more, do a little more, be a little better. And some of that is baked into the fact that your worthiness is kind of constantly up for debate, depending on what you do or don't do. But I also saw that a whole part of it that I hadn't seen clearly was because it felt like I was trying to get through an obstacle course that wasn't for me, that hadn't been designed with my needs and my particular challenges in mind, that it was just, I was doing somewhat, I was like play acting almost in this other way. And so I really wanted to talk more about that with you today.
Yeah. So what I want to say here is because sometimes when we start to get in this space of feminine spirituality, I can get some walls put up by some of your male listeners who feel like, hey, we're trying to go to the same place. These kinds of transcendent spiritual experiences, these are somewhat genderless. Why do we have to make this about gender at all? And so what I want to say is, even if we were trying to get to the same place, which is a healthy relationship with ego, transcendent spiritual experiences, things like that can be described as genderless when experienced. How we get there when men are raised in a patriarchal culture or religion and women are raised in that same culture, how we get there looks very different in ways that sometimes none of us see when you're baked into that system. So I had my Mormon faith crisis 15 years ago. This is like 5 years ago for me. It was like 10 years after leaving Mormonism that I had that kind of aha moment that you're talking about, where I realized I was taking in so much internalized patriarchy with me and hadn't even noticed it. So this is not something that like I was working with when I was doing my deconstruction. It was so intuitive to me, I didn't even know it was there yet for another 10 years. So really what I like to talk about is when you're a man raised in a patriarchal religion, specifically something like Mormonism, where you're just so goddamn special. What men are able to do is build a healthy ego in childhood. And that is great. That is healthy. Healthy ego is great. We want you to be a person. And so much of a man's spiritual journey is learning how to calm down an overinflated ego. This is why they have such positive experiences doing things like mushrooms, where they have an ego death, because then they can experience this feeling of being very connected and that you are not the center of a universe that revolves around you, which is how they were raised. And so men, sometimes without even knowing it, both in religion and outside of religion, in the post-religious spiritual space, are talking about kill the ego, ego death, more service-minded, make sure you give more to others, try to kill your needs and things like that. And maybe that really is healthy for an overinflated sense of ego. But what women do with that is what you just said, which is they just keep trying and hustling, and it's not working. Whatever benefits that the men are getting from that ego dissolving work is not working for them. I have met now hundreds, maybe even thousands of women who leave religion, start working with some kind of male guru, meditation, something, and they're still hustling to try to do spiritual work that's not meant for them. And the reason it's not meant for them is that male guru or teacher or person doesn't realize that for them, it is healthy to do work for an overinflated ego. But if you try to give that to a woman or a queer person who has an underinflated ego, it does nothing for them. It doesn't help them. And so what actually is spiritual work for women to get to the place of a healthy ego in spiritual life is to take more space, to get bigger, to find your voice, to say, I'm ordering. I was like 35 before I ordered the kind of pizza that I like, because I just naturally said, my kid likes this, my husband likes this, I'm ordering this, and I would just make do. Because it was just so natural to me. And especially as an ex-Mormon, as a Mormon, being raised Mormon, it's so natural for me to think of others first. And so my spiritual journey, and for so many women and queer people, or also men in patriarchy who were never the leadership type and always felt less than, actually the spiritual work that you need to be doing is not more selflessness and more ego death. It's actually dating yourself and getting bigger. But what spiritual guru with a man bun tells you, hey, make sure that you like be a little bit of an asshole today because that's actually really good for you. Nobody's, they're not saying that. And so it's just not considered part of spirituality. And so I think there's a lot of times that men on their spiritual path can learn from women and how relational we are. But I think that there are times that women can learn from men, because who does like audacity and like walking to a room and claiming space like better than men? Like my husband learned that far before I learned how to do that. I just started last year, like not rereading my emails and checking my tone, but writing emails like my husband does, which is just like, here's my response, send. And, and so these, even if we're trying to get to the same place, which is a healthy spirituality and a healthy ego, if you're raised in patriarchy, like what you need to get to that place, it's almost like we come to that from different sides of the table. And if women don't know that, then they're always trying to apply spiritual advice that isn't meant for them. That's my rant. And I'll sing that till the day that I die.
And I will clap and say amen, because it is just fascinating to me how over and over and over I have women say to me things like, I don't even know who I am, what I want, because of overgiving, over serving, the way that we just continue to sacrifice ourselves for the good of everybody else, prioritizing everyone else. Like there's only so much time and energy and effort that you have. And so when all of it goes to other people, I just think it makes all the sense in the world that when you're in your mid 30s, maybe 40, 45, getting up there toward midlife, and some of the kids grow up and move out, or some of the job pressures are less, that's when a lot of women are like, wait, what's even here? Who am I? And what they want more than anything is to know who they are, what they want to do with their lives, and to have the space to do it.
Yeah, and I so agree. And the thing that hurts my heart is they'll vulnerably walk into a meditation space,
Yeah, that's
in
it.
post-religious spaces, because they're just trying to find some way to connect deeper to themselves. And the teacher's doing a 2-hour meditation on killing your ego, and that's not, and they don't have one. And the teacher doesn't know that because they're unaware that you need an ego to be able to kill it, or, at least reduce its influence. And the woman doesn't know that. And so she, again, just like in religion, feels like she's broken. I had a woman, oh my God, Sarah, I was like trying to hold back tears in this session. I had a woman 2 weeks ago. She has 8 kids, and she told me, I'm not spiritual. I don't have any spirituality. Now, this woman has a healthy relationship, a healthy adult relationship with 8 adult children. Do you like, and so she told me, I don't have any spirituality. I have never had any time for spirituality. I'm just not a spiritual person. And if we actually lived in like a bizarro world, she'd be able to walk into a church and say, I'm a mom who has 8 children, and my kids still like me. I have healthy adult relationships with 8 out of 8 of my children. And we would hand her a microphone, and we would sit down, and we would say, oh my God, we're in the presence of a spiritual guru. And we would say, tell us the
Yeah.
lessons that you've learned. Tell us about the ego work that you did when you were cleaning up poop in the middle of the night and you were tired and sleep deprived, but in that moment you showed up, or you chose love when it was hard, or you chose love when your nerves were screaming. Tell us your stories. But instead, she comes to me and says, I'm not spiritual. And it just shatters my heart. And it's because of this. It's because only men are defining what spirituality is. So if you're not up at 5 a.m. taking an ice bath, doing a 2 hour meditation, going and doing ayahuasca in Costa Rica, and whatever all the men are telling you to do, then you're not spiritual. And I'm just like not gonna stand for that anymore once I saw it. But for like 10 years, I still didn't see it, even after I left Mormonism, because it's so baked in to just a patriarchal culture, even when you leave religion.
Amen. Is it the man bun? Do you think that
I
that's
can't,
what?
I can't I tease the man bun guys, and it's more that it's not that if you want to have long hair and like you feel like that's an authentic hairstyle for you, then like go for it. But like when I say man bun guy, like the type
I
of guy that I'm talking
exactly,
about, right? And
exactly.
he's like 25, and he sits in a full lotus pose, and he has in his Instagram, and he's in Bali, and he's telling me how to be spiritual. And I'm a mom of four, like why am I trying to take advice from that guy? It's not even that he's a bad guy. He's probably helping a lot of people. But I'm waking up to a kid who has pneumonia this morning. I've got to change my whole life around that. His advice from being a single 25-year-old man bun guy, it's just not the advice that I need for this time in my life. But because they have, more men in and outside of religion have the microphone when it comes to spirituality, we still as women find ourselves listening to people giving advice for a kind of life that we don't have, or a kind of ego that I didn't have either. And I didn't realize how like damaging that was to me.
So damaging. And so if you are listening to this and you are having some aha moments and realizing like, shit, that is me too, there's a good reason for that, right? It's patriarchy has for so long gave men the endowment of spirituality, of leadership, of knowing. I mean, so many women even believe that they don't know what is best for them. They have to have someone outside of them tell them. They have to check it with a couple people just to make sure they're not making the right decision. There's a lot of our own programming that we have to see and be able to undo to be able to develop our own spirituality. When you work with women, Britt, what are some of the first steps or things that they have to do to really be able to claim their own deeper soul space?
Yeah, so the first would just be kind of dating yourself and finding out who you are. And so some of that may be Enneagram work is a personality tool that I use that's just a helpful mirror for people. I like it because it doesn't have any truth claims that you have to believe in anything. It's just a tool, and I like things that are, just tools. Um, or digging into your core values. What are your core values, and what does that look like? How do you create? How do you connect? So I would use like the contemplation tree, which shows all the different ways that humans connect, which is at its root, spirituality is just connection to your deepest self and outside of yourself. So I would use something like the contemplation tree, which is this huge study we did in 2004 that shows all the ways that humans connect. And yes, there is things like meditation, but there are also things like girls' lunch. And when in Mormonism were we ever told that like girls' lunch can be church? Because it absolutely is sometimes. Like my girls' group chat is scripture to me. Like that place is an inspired, sacred place to me. And so first we need to like figure out who you are and what drives you and date yourself and find out your personality type, start claiming your voice, and then also expand our definition of what spirituality and connection is so that we can actually claim that your gardening or the way that you cook for people or the way that you love to podcast or the way that you do this, that actually is your spiritual practice. Let's claim it as such. Let's build it into your life the way that we used to with Mormonism, where it was just built into our life. And then we just start, and that process never ends. We're continually going deeper, learning more about ourselves, continuing to connect more outside of ourselves. And we just kind of go back and forth, more deeply within, more expansive outside of ourselves. And I'm still on that process. I'm still in that journey. But yeah, I would start with core values, some kind of personality typing. I prefer Enneagram. Some others use Big Five or like the INFJ kind of stuff. There's lots of different tools that you can use. I would even recommend taking all of them, and they're different parts of you, even family systems, parts work, shadow work, inner child work. Let's do some deep dives into who you are, and then let's work on how do you actually connect to the world? How do you connect outside of yourself? And let's build that up as your spiritual practice, even if it is just taking your dog on a walk and listening to a podcast. If that fills your cup, that's your church on Sunday. Let's claim that. We're going to do that every Sunday. And then we start building from there.
The simplicity of that is so beautiful. Like if we could just like really hear that anything that creates connection is spirituality, I just feel like that would just be such a sigh of relief for so many people.
Yeah.
And what I love about you and your background is that you actually have the training and the education around how did something as beautiful as connection and the desire for connection to each other, connection to something bigger than us in the universe, the divine, God, whatever, morph into a brick and mortar building with tests that you have to pass for whether or not you're one of us, not one of us. We can kick you out if you don't obey the rules. We can apply different levels of worthiness to your ability to either serve or be visible in the church. And my guess is that the men who made the church wanted the church to be able to serve the egos that they were supposed to be undoing, and it just kind of turned around and bit him in the ass. Is that an accurate summation of how we got
Yeah.
churches?
I'll add a little bit more to that, which is this seems to be in human history about the last 10,000 years that we've been doing it this way. Before then, we lived very communally, and your gifts to the tribe very much mattered, male and female. We know now that women did used to hunt, and we know now that your wisdom to the tribe really mattered, even if you were an old man. So there was a communal life that we seem to have come from. But about 10,000 years ago, when agriculture hit, that's when everything changed. So when we started to stay in one place and started farming, we created a surplus. And once a surplus happened, now we have hierarchies because we have bigger communities now. And so when you get to 150 people, below 150 people, you can sustain a community with just the community and gossip that can sustain an entire community. Just you're talking to each other and how you relate to each other and your gifts to the tribe. Once you get above 150 people, you get hierarchies and you get shared myths. And then also what happens is you get a priest class, which means we have enough surplus that the priests don't have to work. And now they're going to be the ones doing the religious rites and rituals. So when I'm picking on men, it's not even that I'm picking on all men when we're talking about men recreate religion. We're actually also talking about a specific kind of man, which is a priest class man who wasn't working, who was supported by the community, who told us all the rites and rituals that we need to do in order to, whatever the shared myth was, get into heaven or worship some god or whatever. And then we just kind of started to do it that way. Now, the more a god wanted prime real estate, or storm gods are very important in agriculture, which Yahweh was just one storm god in a Canaanite pantheon. Certain gods became more powerful, and over time, instead of having pantheons of gods, we now had one singular god. And that really comes from changes in agriculture. Instead of earth goddesses, we want rain becomes very important. And so now we're worshiping a sky god. Sky god's creating everything, in control of everything, wants you to conquer other peoples for more land. And so a lot of this just comes from the changes that happened in the agricultural revolution 10,000 years ago. And then when we just start adding more and more to that, especially kind of the fears of men not being needed. I think one of the best things about being a Mormon man is when you retire, many men in general will feel like they're not needed or wanted, but not in Mormonism. They're stake presidents, they're area presidents, they go on missions, they get to be very important people. And so it is serving men. And then when they go to heaven, they always, get to have lots of wives, whether that's Mormonism or Islam or whatever. So it is kind of serving underlying fears and desires of men, and then the rites and rituals are made by priest class men that didn't have a life like anyone else because they were supported by the rest of the community. And then just over time, that kind of patriarchy took over the world. We're not just talking about Abrahamic religions, we're also talking about Eastern religions too. To this day, if you want to be a Buddhist monk, a Buddhist nun, you have to follow, I think it's 311 rules, and for men, it's like 213. Like women still have to do more in almost all religions. So it's a big complex topic, but really we're talking about agriculture, certain gods becoming important, patriarchy becoming a very powerful way to produce children and money and power and resources and kick out other peoples. And we're kind of seeing that the effects of that on the world now. And it hurts both men and women because as much as women weren't meant to be just kind of owned on a property, which is what happened with agriculture. Also, men are more than just the paycheck that they can provide. They also have more gifts than that. My husband so benefited from the work that I did in unpacking patriarchy because he was the kind of guy in the church who never read scriptures and said prayers because he's not a words person. It's just not his thing. I'm the words person for both of us. He's not a words person. He to this day doesn't read books, not his thing. And so he always felt bad that he wasn't good enough, but his like triathlon training is spiritual to him. His 2-hour bike rides are spiritual to him. His pilgrimage where he volunteers at Kona for the World Triathlon competition is his pilgrimage. And so when he was able to see that patriarchy had hurt him too by defining what spirituality is for him too, now we're in a position in our marriage where he's supportive of my spiritual life and practice, and I support what fuels him and what connects him. And they're different and they're unique, but it was unpacking patriarchy that got us there for both of us. So it helped him too.
I
That was a
love that
lot. That was a long rant.
no, that important rant, because I think once you pair just the priest class agricultural revolution with some of the qualities of just what you might call a more degraded, masculine, conquering, hoarding, being power hungry, wanting to take and not consider how that, because if you can do that in the name of God, then it's legitimate. I think that says a lot about where we are today especially in the United States and our, current political climate, Christianity being used as a weapon and as a tool of diminishment and degrading other people, not allowing them to be who they really are. I love that you say that this type of really patriarchally driven spiritual framework doesn't even really work for men,
Yeah.
because it doesn't allow them to find and define their own spirituality. And it
Yes.
takes, I think, it's interesting because in Mormonism, for sure, you knew who was going to be the bishops, the stake
Absolutely.
presidents. We're talking about leadership, different leadership positions. You knew, you could look at a guy and you could say, oh, that guy is going to be in primary. He's going to work with kids,
Yeah.
because he's
type A personality,
yes,
charisma, kind of like a high powered job, one of those guys.
yes, yeah,
And if you were
yeah.
not
Those were
that
the leaders.
guy, when you were not that guy, you really suffered as a man too. But even when you are that guy, your human development is limited and your partnership with your wife is limited. There's a lot of limits to how much you can grow and develop when kind of your shadow side or your ego has no checks to it and you're not able to
Yeah,
grow, you're not able to be vulnerable because the guy who's the leadership guy always has to be the leadership guy. He can never have a moment of vulnerability. That hurts
right,
him too. There's going to be a
right.
day where something in his life is going to kick his ass and he's not going to have the tools for it because he's
Yeah,
always been leadership guy. So it
yeah,
does hurt everyone. And the analogy that I use is closed captioning. We originally did closed captioning, captions on TV shows and movies for the deaf community. And now the majority of people prefer to use closed captioning, deaf or not, because once we added that modality, it helped everyone. And so I want to do the same thing for spirituality, even though I'm going to pick on men sometimes here. I'm trying to help you too. Okay. I think this
yes.
is going to help everyone.
It will. And I couldn't watch my English murder mysteries with their hard
Absolutely.
accents without closed captioning. I would miss half of the plot. So
Yeah.
it really does open it up for everyone to have a different experience. And I'll just name kind of two things that I went through. Number one, I love that you use the Enneagram. And if you are not sure what the Enneagram is, there's a ton of information on it online. Basically, what I love about it is that rather than assigning you just a certain type, it's really good at getting at your motivations and your
Hmm.
fears.
Hmm.
And those are really have been for me two important ways of understanding myself. And I first tested as an
Yeah.
Enneagram.
Oh, I'm so curious.
Yes.
Tell
Do you
me.
want to guess?
Oh, no, I don't want to guess. I'm so
Okay.
curious
Okay.
though. Tell me.
I first tested as a two.
Oh, of course, because
Of
Mormonism
course.
wants you to be a two. Mormonism
Right.
wants
So
all women to be a
twos
two.
are empathetic and
Hmm.
sincere, very warm, very reassuring.
And do very
Um,
well in the church. They're less likely
very
to
well.
deconstruct because they do very well in the church because there's a
Yeah.
lot of I wouldn't want to say power, but at least validation because that's what they want you to be, you know? And
Yes.
so,
Yes.
Enneagram 2 women less likely to deconstruct. Yeah, because that's the kind of woman that does well in Mormonism. But
Because
what
they're
are
they're
you? Yeah,
they're indispensable, right? They're
right.
so giving and so
Yes.
self-sacrificing, always willing to stay
They're
and
the
like
lifeblood.
do more, just a little more, give a little
Yeah.
more. And I'm actually an eight.
Oh, that is a big difference. You had a journey of self-discovery to go from a 2 to an
Yeah.
8.
Because eights are very calm, but confident, strong, assertive. They're the bitch potentially of
But they're the bitch for the marginalized. And so
that's
they will
right.
deconstruct because they're going to be bothered by injustice. They're going to
That
be
was it.
bothered by people who are hurt by the church, and they're going to start standing up for them, and they're going to pay a social cost for standing up to them.
And I did.
Yeah.
Um, in fact, I lost callings, I lost social standing, and it happened because my daughter came out as
See that?
gay.
Yeah, that makes
And
total
all of
sense
a
to me.
sudden, all of this harmful rhetoric that I had heard and was very bothered by when it was aimed at my child. And this is so typical of so many women. I felt bad about it. Like, why did it have to be my kid before it actually kind of woke me up? But that's because that's inherent in being like a mother and a protector.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so it really kind of galvanized like, wait, we can't stay. I can't subject her to this. And so And now that I have multiple children who are queer, it really gave me the space to really take a look at it. And for so often for women, I don't think this is right or wrong. We do things for our children that end up benefiting ourselves in ways that we
Mm.
don't know. And I think sometimes I used to kind of get down on myself, like, why couldn't I do it for me? But I don't want anyone else to feel like that, because it is one of the inherent,
It is a
um,
part of you.
it is a part of you.
Yeah.
Like doing, standing up for our children in a way that we aren't necessarily equipped to do for ourselves, I think is just part of it, and we benefit from it.
Mm. I was just talking about this with someone over the weekend because someone asked me what was your last day at church. And my last day at church, I don't know if you know this, but I adopted my daughter, and she's a child of color. She's Pacific Islander. She has brown skin. And I was holding her. And at the time, I didn't believe in Mormonism anymore. I don't even think I believed like that Jesus died for our sins anymore, but I still believed in God. And my husband was still a believer, so I was still attending church because I'm doing the nuance thing. I'm gonna help from within. And maybe I did, maybe I didn't, but that's what I was doing. And I knew, and there were times that I feel guilty, like you said. I feel guilty that even though I had heard about blacks in the priesthood, I of course read the Book of Mormon that your skin was a curse. I'd heard all the apologetic arguments for it. I wish it bothered me more when it was just me. And I'm sorry. Like I have to tell like the community of color, I'm sorry that it didn't matter until I was holding my daughter. And I actually had to imagine, because you have all these mental gymnastics. I'm an apologist type, so I have all these apologetic arguments. But the moment that I know that I have to say that to my child is the moment that it hit me that this is not enough and I'm going to have to find another way for her. And I walked out of the church and I never went back. And yeah, I do wish it bothered me more
Yeah.
before. But I have to also recognize that my motherhood is a part of me, and it challenged me in ways that I wasn't challenging myself, because maybe I could make it work for me because I could compartmentalize things, but I refused to try to do that to her because she didn't deserve that. And that is
Yeah.
a part of me. And so, yeah, I feel guilt about that also, and also it's a part of my story. But that was the last day that I attended church, was looking at her and knowing the arguments that you have for this,
Yeah.
the environment of patriarchy and sexism and racism that she's going to have to be raised up in. I'm going to have to figure something out because it's not good enough for her, not for her, right? And then I
Yeah.
walked out.
What I really hope is that women will feel in listening to this conversation permission to do that searching.
Mm,
And in bringing up my Enneagram test, I just want to say it might take a little bit, right?
yeah.
You might need some time to really sift through that programming to
Someone asked me
get
the other
to,
day, yeah,
yeah,
like what if I take it and it's wrong because I don't really know myself? And I said I took it and I was like you, mine was different from when I took it as a Mormon versus not. And so I just told her like, yeah, that's part of the process. You're
it
gonna,
is.
it's
Yeah.
you just got to dive in anyway.
So as you are dating yourself and really feeling into your core values, paying attention to how you create and how you connect, what I have felt the best thing for me is just to do the next right thing, just the
Mm,
next step that feels like a yes, that feels like, okay, I'm going to try it. And to not beat
yeah.
yourself up if it feels like you take that next step and it wasn't really what you thought. Do
Mm-hmm.
you want to add anything to that as we wrap up here?
Yeah, what I would add to that is this is where mysticism can really come in. So mysticism is the experience of what people have called God without putting words to it, certainly without putting a box around it. And the key for mystics is that they follow their resonances. And maybe in Mormonism we used to call that, the spirit. But if I were to take it out of that language, it's really when your subconscious buzzes in your body because it says, I think there's something here. Now, that doesn't mean that it's always right. We can't make a God out of that because sometimes our intuition is wrong or sometimes it's just part of the learning process. But we can dig into trusting those resonances again. That when you see someone, so for me, I went to Sunstone for the first time and I was nobody. I hadn't written anything. I hadn't started talking with Bill Reel. I literally was just, nobody knew me. And I saw the speakers up there and I had that resonance of, I love this. I love this conversation. I love that all these people have a book on the table. And there was a part of me that's like, maybe you could do this too. I didn't know how. It was a resonance. And now, I speak at Sunstone and Thrive all the time. It's just a normal part of my life. But it started because I just showed up one day and there was a part of me that's buzzing. And, what you call that, whether you call that the spirit or some kind of pull, or, resonance, those are, your subconscious has so much more knowledge and information than your conscious mind has. So when you get those resonances, it's a part of you saying there's something here that feels like me or feels valuable or feels like something that I need or feels like something that I would like to do. And we can learn how to trust those again when our emotions have been manipulated in religion. And sometimes there's that little bit of distrust. We can start to learn how to trust those resonances again. And that's a huge part of the journey.
I love that. Thank you. We'll end there. And I hope this isn't our last conversation. I really appreciate your insight and your wisdom here. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Love this, Sarah.
Hey, thanks for listening. If this podcast has been helpful to you, I would really appreciate it if you would give me a 5-star rating in whatever platform you listen to your podcasts. And if you go to my website, sarahfisk.coach, you can sign up there to receive my emails. Right now, I'm taking private one-to-one clients who want my help speeding up this work in their own lives. I really hope to provide a lot of free information on my website and in my podcast for people to do this work on their own. But if you're interested in having a coach like me to help you implement these things faster, to find the blind spots and obstacles that you're not aware of, go to my website and sign up for a consult. That's a time when you and I can get on Zoom and talk about the particulars of your situation, and I can show you how I could be helpful. The second thing you can do on my website is sign up for a freebie that I have called Difficult Conversations. Having a conversation that seems like it's going to be hard or difficult is one of the things that people pleasers struggle with. And so I've created a whole guide for you to be able to do that with some more confidence. That will also get you signed up for information about my group program, Stop People Pleasing. It's a group coaching program where you join a community of women just like you who are struggling to overcome perfectionating and people pleasing. And we do it together in a group. It's a really amazing opportunity to not just learn from your own experience, but just to see how similar you are to so many other women out there. The healing and the challenging and the laughing and the growth that happens in that beautiful community of women is really amazing. And if it's interesting to you, I would love for you to know about it.